Hi, I'm Demi, founder and CEO of You're the Book Press and editor-in-chief of Self Pub Magazine. We're here in the studio for a little bit of Behind the Author series today with Marian Condon. Welcome.
Thank you, Demi. I'm delighted to be here.
So great to have you. What was Marian's life like growing up?
Well, I was an only child.
Me too.
Okay, I like to say that my parents looked in the cradle, recognized perfection, and saw no reason to go further.
My mom told me, she said, God, Demi, I wouldn't take $1 million for you, but I wouldn't pay a penny to have another like you.
Oh, okay.
I think you got the better plan.
I may have, yeah. I grew up in Troy, New York, which
is that upstate?
It's upstate New York. It's sort of near Albany.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And my dad was a stockbroker, and he was an ardent golfer. But he was also a student of the language. He was mainly a self-educated person, and so words were valued in my house. And my father would play a game with me. Every day there'd be a new vocabulary word, and it was never done, in a you must learn this word fashion. It was always kind of fun. So I remember one of those words still. It was revetments. And he would say, a revetment is kind of a low wall fortification, and he would say, down behind the... And I'd say, revetments. And so I grew up with a new word every day, and it was in a game format. And so I just developed a love of the language, and that segued nicely into reading a lot. My dad used to read me Shakespeare, believe it or not. Yeah.
Did he do the voices?
He did. And he would read me poetry. I also had subscriptions to about 5 different comic books, which were fun to read. So as a kid, when do you learn to read? First grade, second grade, first grade maybe.
Yeah.
I would whiz through those storybooks because I wanted to read the story. So I had the whole book read in a week. So that segued quite nicely into writing. My career, it was in academia. I still am a professor at York College. And I used to have to write, papers, academic things, but I never...
Did you ever get to use the word revetment?
I never did, but I've never forgotten the word revetment. Maybe I'll build one in my backyard sometime, for old time's sake.
I can't wait to see what the Homeowners Association has to say about that.
Right.
Good thing you're president.
Right. So while I was still teaching full-time, I decided I'm going to try a book, and I enjoyed the process. And now...
You must be loony.
Well, now I don't have to do, academic kinds of things, so I can do things I really, really want to do. And that was really the first baby. It's the first book for public consumption that I've done. And every minute of it really, yes, it took a lot of time, but it was just a joy. I never felt like somebody had to horsewhip me to get me to sit down, with my computer and finish the book. And I got to interview wonderful dancers from really all over the place, Texas and other countries, and hear their stories about the phenomenal changes that dancing had brought to their lives. So I've made connections. I still get emails from people all over the world because of the book. And so it was a labor of love right from start to finish.
Is there anyone that you interviewed you might point to say, wow, dance completely changed their life?
Yeah, there's a guy actually who preferred to remain anonymous in the book. He describes himself as tremendously introverted. Mm-hmm. He runs a dance blog called Facing Diagonal Wall, and that's how I got to know him. I wrote him private or on his blog and said, could I interview for the book? So I know who he is, but I wasn't allowed to put his name in the book. He lost 110 pounds after he started dancing.
That is life-changing.
110 pounds. He's a different person entirely. And then a wonderful young man whose story is told in the book had crippling social anxiety disorder, and a wonderful young teacher from the studio at which I dance took him under her wing and really changed his life. Yeah. So one of my interviewees has a developmentally disabled adult son living at home with her, and she's his caregiver. And she describes the studio as what keeps her sane. Going there and just losing herself in the dance and the fellowship takes her mind off the burdens that she has to bear every day.
Now, I know you also practice in a different field unaligned with writing. Tell us a little bit about
Oh,
that.
you're probably talking about my EFT practice.
Yeah.
Well, I do something called emotional freedom technique. I do the classic gold standard version that Gary Craig, who invented EFT, started. And I have just finished my advanced certification.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's a wonderful, big deal.
Thank you. Well, it's just a tremendous thing. Let's suppose, Demi, that you absolutely hated a certain person. You can't stand this person. I mean, every time you see this person, your back teeth start grinding. The chances are, obnoxious as that person may be, there's somebody in your past that really wounded you, and that person reminds you of that other person on some level. So what we would do in EFT is we would go back to that first memory of what aspect of this person's behavior that really upsets you. And we would get back to that original trauma that really made you hypersensitive to whatever it is. And we would then use meridian tapping. You know how acupuncture is about tapping on meridians?
Okay.
And on the body and on the face? EFT is emotional acupuncture. So we would have you access an original memory. Oh, the time my aunt said, she had this horrible look in her eyes. She had this horrible tone of voice. And I was so frightened. That kind of thing. And we would tap that out until your memory of that just went to neutral. So you could tell that story with no affect whatsoever. Yeah, she did that, but it's neutral now.
So letting go of the emotion from that earlier piece can somehow...
can completely change the way you would relate. You might not never love this woman in the today situation.
Well, you're so right to jump to the conclusion that it would be a woman.
Oh, well, okay. See, everybody has a person in mind. When I say this to anybody, it's like, oh, yeah, that person. But you can make your response to that person much more neutral, because why would we want to let anybody have enough power to really upset us? Why would we want to do that? EFT is also wonderful for phobias, people that are afraid of spiders or snakes or enclosed spaces. Or
Devin, are you listening? That wolf spider you saw last week? Oh.
Yeah, it can take care of that. It can take care of fear of public speaking. I use that with my students at the college quite a bit.
That's very useful.
Yeah. So it's just a tremendous tool. It's good as there's things I teach my clients about how to help themselves to use it to help themselves. But for some of the deeper, older stuff, it can be hard to get at. Then having a professional help you can clear up your problems in a surprisingly short period of time.
Well, I know some of our viewers could definitely benefit from this. Where might they find you to get a...
My website is drmariancondon.com. No periods, just drmariancondon.com. And for people who live at a distance from York, where I live, I can do Skype. And so tremendously valuable. I'm so glad I discovered it.
When did you get into EFT?
I've always sort of been fascinated with the alternative world, alternative medicine, alternative approaches to healthcare.
Tell me a little bit about that, because I believe you have a nursing certification, don't you?
Oh, I'm an RN. Oh, yes. And
but alternative therapies.
That's what I really love. And, acupuncture has a wonderful research track record. This is not some goofy thing that somebody, dreamed up. There are a lot of herbs and wonderful things that can be very helpful and far less dangerous than prescription drugs. So I've been fascinated by that world, and I always wanted to have an alternative modality that I could offer that had a very strong research base. And there are close to 60 clinical trials done on EFT thus far. So its efficacy has really been demonstrated very thoroughly. And so that was one of the things. I have a very strong scientific background, so I needed to have that science behind EFT to feel good about it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing this background. You're a fascinating person underneath the writer, but I'm going to flash a picture up on the screen because she's pretty fascinating in sequence, too.
Thank you.
I may even see if we can play a clip of the dancing as well.
Oh, my.
Oh, stunning. Cannot wait to see Marian on the dance floor and to get you out there with us, too. Have a great day. Bye.